suddenly I went from like 10,000 followers to almost 300,000 followers in the space of about 3 weeks. My daughter is type 1 diabetic, my middle daughter. And so she had to have a phone early to monitoring her glucose levels and things like that, which we didn't even think about. We were just thinking it's a medical device, but obviously it gave her access to lots of these things. And she has even said to me, she's 15 now, she said, I wish I didn't have a phone so early. You know, there's this thing called Zwift, like online racing. Like, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, maybe I should get into that. I was like, yeah,
why not?
Fun.
Welcome to the Where We Ride podcast, hosted by me, Lee Bibbering, and my co-host, Georgia Bullard. Joining us in the studio today is Simon Hooper, better known as Father of Daughters on Instagram. He's someone who's built a huge following by sharing honest, funny and often chaotic reality of life with 4 daughters and his wife. And what began as a simple Instagram account has become a voice that connects with so many dads, offering an honest and refreshing take into what fatherhood really means. Simon, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. We kind of want to set the scene a little bit about sort of how you became so well known in the social media world and to us cyclists. You kind of built this huge audience around like family life. How did that all get started?
Well, it's actually started with my wife. So she started social media before I ever did. And I noticed that there was lots of women talking about parenting from a mother's perspective, but no dads. And then we weren't part of the conversation. And I thought, well, I've got 4 kids and I have issues that I want to talk about and I want to make light of the things that we all go through as parents. So I started an account and it kind of took off quite rapidly and then became viral. There was a couple of websites that obviously promote social media and it got picked up by one. And then I had a couple of celebrities in the US who were kind of like reusing some of my stuff.
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Ashton Kutcher was one of them.
No way.
Really weird stuff. And then suddenly I went from like 10,000 followers to almost 300,000 followers in the space of about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Which
I was
kind of
going to
blew
say,
my mind.
how quickly did it all
It blew up really quickly. And obviously I'm still working as well. So this is my full-time job. This is just the fun that I have on the side. But it started this kind of moment where dads could talk about parenting on social media as well and be honest about it and find fun in the mundane things that we all do. Which is what a lot of people spend time on social media doing now, isn't it? Just poking fun at their own lives and the silly stuff that we do. So
Well, it's funny because when we were talking about off air, and you said this sort of, it sort of gives you a voice to fathers, and you were talking about just sort of social media in general. It's something that kind of resonated with me because I said to you, I wasn't really on social media at the time.
Yeah,
and I think it might be because my wife used to follow your wife, and she used to be on quite a lot of social channels. It wasn't something that I thought kind of guys. I didn't have anybody to kind of follow. I know that sounds ridiculous.
Well, this might be wrong, but my understanding of how men tend to use social media is they'll look at things that interest them, but not necessarily follow people. And so I still find that predominantly I have 90% followers who are female.
Right.
But 10% of 860,000 is still 86,000.
That's still a lot of men.
It's quite a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's again, when I kind of look at what the content is, you just exactly describe what my Instagram feed is. My Instagram feed tends to be cycling, a little bit of football, some politics, and then it's kind of opened me up to a world of people like you. So it's it's great to kind of watch. One of the things that we were interested about is there's a big there's a difficulty within families in trying to limit screen time and kind of trying to be present. How do you balance that with not a day job, but being so prevalent on social media?
Yeah, well, I think you're as qualified as I am to answer this question, just being a parent with young kids. I think it's always a balancing act, especially now that screens are everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's the default way that we parent sometimes. It's like, you know what, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Just go and look at a screen for a little bit. Just give me half an hour quiet time so I can get on with my actual life. But it becomes more of a balancing act as they get older as well. So I've got kids who are ranging from 18, who is not a child anymore and is looking at universities and all that kind of stuff, down to my twins who are 10, who I still struggle to tell apart, by the way, which isn't great. But it's been an evolving picture around screens and how we use them, because obviously schools are bringing in screens for use in lessons and all that kind of stuff. All their homework is on screens as well. Can't constantly be over their shoulder and making sure they're doing their homework. So we have to kind of lock things down. And Google Family Link, for example, is a great way to control exactly how much screen time they have. And I'm really careful about being on my screen in front of kids. I don't want to be that person who stood in the kitchen while your kid is talking to you and then not paying attention. So I have quite strict things about how I post. I will only post in the evening after they go to bed.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Do you almost feel a little bit hypocritical being like, you can't go on the screens and then you've got to do it for your own?
A little bit, but I kind of I do try and control when I post, and especially as the kids have got older, about the type of content that I'm posting as well, because I'm aware that a lot of the kids' friends follow me. So if I say anything that's derogatory or pointing fingers at them saying, my kid's being ridiculous, invariably it's going to come back to them.
Yeah.
And it's something that we all probably hadn't thought about when our kids were younger, but as they grow up, that stuff's indelible. It's always there. Yeah. So you need to be conscious of where and how and the content you post. It's a bit of a minefield. I'm still trying to figure out.
But that's really interesting that you put those self-imposed time limits on you, because one of the things, when you're in front of behind the iPhone and you're producing the content, to somebody like myself, I just assume that that's kind of like a constant ongoing theme. But it's really interesting. You don't want to be that person that's sitting in the kitchen whilst your kids are trying to talk to you and you're not present.
No, exactly. And I think also if we're out and about, I know that people post stories of like real time what they're doing. I don't. I make sure that if I'm taking a photo or a video or something, I will wait until we're at home and then I can create captions and, do all the stories, but I'll mass upload it later. Yeah. I don't ever want to be uploading stories while I'm out and about because it's just another distraction. So I'm quite clear about those rules about how I want to do it.
That's really interesting because I've obviously, when I'm following you, I saw you doing sort of the camping trip with the kids and I was thinking, it's so great to be present, but it's so hard to record all that content to make sure you're uploading it and trying to kind of conform with social norms on social media. But if you're already putting those kind of rules in place, you've kind of got that locked down.
And it also enables you to actually reflect on what you're going to post before you post it. Because a lot of people will just kind of post something and they'll say, probably delete that.
Yeah.
Whereas at least I've got time to think about it and curate it a little bit more. I don't want to ever put out a image that I live the perfect life, because that's not what any of us have, but I do want to be able to be a bit more thoughtful about what I'm posting and when I'm posting it.
Do the kids ever, you say about like not wanting to, embarrass the kids for events? Do they ever say like, Dad, why don't you do this? Why don't you post about that?
Sometimes.
Are they giving you ideas?
Yeah, they are. But also we banned YouTube at home.
Did you?
Really?
Yeah, we took it. So their kind of view, especially the younger ones, they don't have phones. I'm not planning on giving them phones until much later. And when they do, they're not going to be fully functional iPhones. They're going to be locked down. And there's a big discussion obviously going on about social media and like in Australia, they've had the ban for 16 and unders. Whether it's been successful or not, kids are always going to find ways around things.
Age verification ways,
exactly. Yeah. Hey, Mum, just look at my phone 1 second. Oh, yeah, fine, you pass. But yeah, we're trying to be strict about what they can and can't have access to at home. So yeah, YouTube got taken off the TVs. It's taken off all the iPads that they have. Everything's kind of locked down from that perspective, just because they were spending hours looking at brain rot. And I was like, nope, I can't have that any longer. I need to actually talk to you and we need to go outside and do things.
That's amazing. I mean, the biggest sort of concern I have with my children is the same principle as when you talk about brain rot, is just that finger flick of just the next video, and it's that dopamine hit. So it's very interesting that somebody who's so prevalent on social media has banned social media for their kids. I mean, cards on the table, I mean, I completely agree. But what's your view on social media for under 16s? Because when you talk about the Australians, I think, I mean, you're right, they'll get around it, but I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah, I think, my daughter is type 1 diabetic, my middle daughter. And so she had to have a phone early to monitoring her glucose levels and things like that, which we didn't even think about. We're just thinking it's a medical device, but obviously it gave her access to lots of these things. And she has even said to me, she's 15 now, she said, I wish I didn't have a phone so early.
Really?
She recognizes that she's in that dopamine hit, scrolling, doom scroll era of her life where everything is just in front of her all the time. And so I think from that perspective, it is important to kind of make sure that you are controlling consumption for the younger children, especially because these are when their brains are being formed. This is when it's really important that they are experiencing life as a child and not just giving themselves over to a screen, because I really worry that our kids' childhoods are being eroded. Like they should be out on a bike, playing in the park, and for us not worrying about them rather than sitting at home trying to get to the next YouTube video.
I would agree. And I think maybe obviously I'm a bit younger, but I think I was of that last generation, maybe.
The last generation pre-social media.
Pre-social media.
Yeah.
I remember I used to swim competitively as a kid, and I think I was about 9 or 10, and my mum and dad had dropped me off at a session once, and then I'd gone in, as I always did, but it had been cancelled, and there was sort of like a gang of us sort of stuck at the pool, and I had to go to like reception and be like, can I ring my mum from like the swimming pool reception? And getting home, and my mum and dad like having the conversation of, should we give you a mobile phone? It feels wrong. Because I was like 9 or 10, and then eventually ended up with this Nokia brick. Yeah, that had to live in my swimming bag and was for emergencies only, so that I could call them. And they had like a real big sort of conversation about that and discussion.
Yeah, well, I think it's important though for young kids that they don't understand what they could be exposed to as well.
No.
Right, and unless you've got really tight controls over it and you've spent a lot of time setting it all up correctly, then you can't always protect them. And as a parent, that is your role, really, to trying to protect them from content which may be harmful for them or warp their view of the world or whatever it might be. So I'm quite fortunate that I'm 43 and I didn't grow up with all of that. It must be a horrible pressure, especially when all your friends have got it and you're the one that has these controls in place. But I think we're doing them a service.
I agree with you. And also, if you're, we're still the analog generation where we can have that perspective. Yeah. I wonder what it will be like when my kids have kids, because they're digitally native. So when you talk about your eldest, she probably didn't grow up with, I know so they would have had screens, but it's not quite the same as your twins have grown up in a completely digital world, a social media world. So that must be, that's going to be harder as they grow up.
I think so. I think they've shown more interest in what I'm posting on Instagram as well, because they know that sometimes they're in the content. They're like, can I see while I'm editing it? Yeah. But they aren't in the position where they're like, oh no, I don't want that on there. They just find it funny that I kind of have this presence, but to them I'm just dad, which is great. But yeah, definitely with the older ones, they're like, no, I don't want to be in this or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
That's fine.
Choice. Yeah.
Exactly. So what does family life look like for you? You've got 4 daughters. You've got a wife who does shift work, I think. She's a midwife.
Yeah, she's a midwife.
What does it look like?
30 hours in a day by the looks of things.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot more bags than most people who are 43. It's busy. It doesn't stop. It starts at kind of 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and it doesn't stop until kind of midnight, really. I've got into this terrible habit. I'm sure we'll talk about this when we talk about cycling, but my window for exercise is the evening time. And it means that sometimes I would get on the watt bike at about like 8, 9 o'clock and I would do a 2-hour workout. And I'd then come off at about 11 o'clock, covered in sweat, sit on the sofa and I think, I'm so buzzing.
There's no way I can go to bed.
No, I'm not going to go to sleep now. Right. And I find that I got into this terrible cycle of doing this. So I'm trying to adjust my sleep patterns right now, but it's full on. And we're constantly going to sports events with kids, taking them to friends. We've got one of these houses where everyone comes to our house as well. So when all the 4 girls have got friends over, I am heavily outnumbered. It's like me and 12 girls, and I'm suddenly kind of putting pizzas in the oven, trying to get everything sorted while Clemmy's doing a shift. It's hard work, but I don't know any different actually. So I quite like it.
Have you got a man cave for the exercise?
Do you know what? When we moved into this house where we're in now, we've been there for about 8 years down in Kent. There is a basement, and I spent about 2 months converting it into a pain cave. So it's got my watt bike down there. It's got wall-mounted TVs. It's got some LED lights, and I will disappear down into there. Although my 15-year-old has suddenly started showing an interest in cycling. Ooh. So every time she goes down, she ruins my setup in terms of saddle height, stem length, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh God.
But you'll take that for her to get into cycling, surely.
That's what we liked.
Exactly.
I know. She's just been doing the watt bike plans at the moment, but then I've started, there's this thing called Zwift, like online racing. Mm. Oh, right, okay. Well, yeah, maybe I should get into that. I was like, yeah,
why not?
Fun. And then we can go outside afterwards as well.
Exactly.
And how you encourage your kids into sport? How sort of much of a big deal is that for your family now?
Growing up, I was always involved in sport. So from a very early age, rugby was my first love. I play hockey. I still play hockey now. I got into the England, Southeast England team, over 40s team last year, but I don't have any time to play, so I couldn't accept the place. And then really cycling has been prevalent throughout the whole of background of my childhood and adolescence and then into adulthood as well. So
Right.
they've always seen me be active. And I think that's a really important part, is that if you want your kids to be active, they need to learn from someone and be inspired by someone close to them. That sounds so corny. I'm sure I'm not an inspiration to my kids. I'm probably more of an embarrassment. But it's seeing a parent who is doing stuff. And Clemmy goes to the gym almost every other day as well.
Right.
You grow up in a family where your parents are active, you're more likely to be active.
Oh, I can relate to that, absolutely. So I'm going to road cycling quite young and started racing at a very young age. I got into it through like a triathlon club, but the main reason I wanted to get into cycling was because my dad bought a road bike. My dad had a road bike, and I remember like trying to sit on it. Like
you want to do what your folks do?
Yeah, I was 9 years. I was 9 years old and trying to sit on my 6'2" dad's bike. I was like, I can reach. And wanting to do it because, and then I thought, I want a road bike. My dad's got a road bike, and you do.
Well, my dad is 71, and he is next week doing a triathlon where he is cycling from the bottom of Moutier up to the top of Col de la Loze. He's then doing a run from Col de la Loze, I don't know where, 10K, and then a ski. I think a cross-country ski. I should really listen, if I'm honest. But he's doing the most incredible challenge, and he's 71. I genuinely think that if sort of going back to what you're talking about, if you show your kids rather than tell your kids, they are much more likely to do something.
Yeah. And I think also we're fortunate to be in this generation, because you look back at it, and I was reading a book about cycling a couple of months ago, and it was saying that really we're the first generation of parents who are doing sport into their 40s, 50s and 60s. Previously, I think about my parents, they didn't. They played hockey until they had kids, or played sport until they had kids. And then it kind of became on the back burner, and everything became about careers and families and homes and all that kind of stuff. We have seen the importance of maintaining physical exercise and understand it. And therefore, we're more likely to stay engaged in things into our 40s, 50s, 60s, and see the importance of it, not just for health benefits, but for your mental health and just your own personal satisfaction that you can still do these things.
Still do things.
And socially, I think as well, it's really important for kids as well. Like I'm in my mid-20s, recently moved to London after a career change. A lot of my friends, I'd say 90% of my friends and my friendship group and my socializing comes from sport, whether it's cycling or running or playing netball.
Yeah.
That's how I found my friends. And moving to a new city, I made friends through sport. Yeah. And I think if you teach that to kids at a young age, they'll carry that throughout the whole life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really important, like going through the schooling system as well. As you get into schools that are different, so you're going to your senior school or something, that sports team that you're joining or the club outside of school is your social network, your bond. Like you're going to meet new people, have new experiences, go and do new things. And it all is driven by their engagement in sport, which has been great.
Following your content, I must say, I didn't know that you were into cycling long before you started posting about it. I thought it was relatively new to you. I'm wrong.
No, well, it's always been in the background. So when I was, let's say 10, I really started getting into mountain biking. So I'm from the West Country. I'm from Bristol.
Right.
And so there's good trails out there. And I used to this is once again rose-tinted glasses stuff. But my parents would let me just go out at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd come back at 7 o'clock in the evening. And we'd disappear. We'd go on our bikes and just take a picnic with us. And it's like no phones.
It sounds like utopia, doesn't it now?
Great. Yeah. And I tell my kids like this now, and they're like, what? How? Like, did you have GPS trackers? Like, no, that didn't exist. It's fine. But yeah, those kind of things, those formative moments have meant that I always had this love of being on two wheels because it gives you that freedom. And I've been through an evolution with it, I guess. So we had children quite young. So I was 23, Clemmy was 22, and we just moved to London. And I really wanted to try and stay active as I could. I just didn't have any time. So the only time was commuting. And I was still on my mountain bike at that point, riding around South London, up into the city on a mountain bike with a really slammed saddle. And then I had chronic back pains after about 2 months. I was like, okay, maybe I should look into like one of these road bike things.
Fit.
So I bought a single speed because I love taking things apart as well and building things. So I build bikes for fun. That sounds sad, doesn't it?
No, I've noticed. Sadly, I was very invested in your DIY project on your larder because you are a very hands-on man in a way that I couldn't ever be.
Well, my wife says I have undiagnosed ADHD, which I'm probably sure I do, but I need to take things apart. And bikes are one of those things that you can quite easily take apart and understand. So I like building my own bike, and I've got this single speed which I was burning around on. And I bought I think it was a Planet X something or other. Pro Carbon for like 900 quid or something, and then I started taking that apart and building things, and then I've got a Canyon Air Road, and I was like, okay, it starts to evolve. But the consistency of it has just been that need to be on a bike at some point during the day. And then really in the last 3 years is where the fitness journey changed. So I wanted to go beyond just commuting, and I was just approaching 40, and I thought I really want to kind of do something for myself and see how hard I can push myself in terms of the training. And I did really well. Like my fitness increased hugely. I did lots and lots of training on the watt bike. I was out all the time, like probably too much time. At which point my wife's like, can't ride all the time.
I'm encouraging it to an extent.
Yeah, exactly. But then the doors opened to other opportunities, like do the Maratona and 312. And then I started to get involved in other local events and all these kind of things. And all the things that I'd never thought about. But then you get to a level of fitness or you want to challenge yourself. And then my life became about these cycling challenges, which I could kind of build myself up to, like the Chase the Sun events where you ride across the UK in a day. And that's kind of how I build my life around things now, is that I need those events in
goals.
the calendar. So that I can keep pushing myself forward to be able to try and do those. Less so about the numbers now, because I'll talk about the positives of exercise, but I think there was also negatives of pushing yourselves too far. And I pushed myself into a place where I had a bit of depression because I overtrained. I didn't fuel correctly. I was staying up really late, as I mentioned. And I became hyper-focused on numbers.
Are you quite goal-oriented like that?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Maybe the undiagnosed ADHD that you just mentioned.
Yeah, to my detriment. Like VO2 max, FTP, all these things became really important. My weight became really important, too important. And it had an impact on me. And my wife said to me, I think there's, you might need to have a talk with someone. And I remember thinking about it and I thought, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not myself, because I'm kind of solely focused on thinking about cycling. I'm not fully engaged in everything else going around. And I ended up having talking therapy for about 8 weeks.
Did you?
And a lot of that came back to, trying to challenge myself to these things and outdo myself. And that's a competition I can never win. So the last couple of years has been much more about enjoying my time in the saddle and actually looking up and enjoying things rather than looking down and looking at data. Can
I ask you about the Maratona? Because we had the organisers on a couple of weeks ago. So we've been selling into the Maratona. We were one of the very first organisers. We have a fantastic relationship with them, and I must say, I think that might be one of the greatest events in Europe. I don't know what your view is. When did you do it?
It's incredible. I did it 2 years ago.
Right.
It's hit and miss with the weather.
I will say I was out last year and we had tents flying away and
I mean, in terms of a backdrop, you can't get anything better. I mean, it is an incredible location in terms of the ride. I hadn't considered just how much climbing there is. I know you look at the numbers and you think, I can do that. But it's over a much shorter period than, say, the 312 in Mallorca. And so the ascents, there's no way you can train much for that here in the UK. I can do hill sprints and I can try and do those things, but doing the jowl was like, I started at the bottom. It was a bit of sunshine, go through cloud cover in rain, and it was snowing at the top. And I was doing it for like 50 minutes, and I was like, oh my God.
And it's just relentless. Climb is...
It was pretty soul destroying. But when you get to the top, you get that elation. You're like, oh my God, I have done it. That's okay. I'm kind of
I'm alive.
Getting down through it. It was a real kind of bucket list thing that I wanted to do.
What made you do the marathon? How did you find it?
As I said, my life had become revolved around these kind of events. And I was looking at European events because obviously, as much as I love cycling in the UK pothole roads, there are some glorious places to go. And so I'd just done a bit of research. I was looking at doing the Nürburgring. There's a race that goes around that 24-hour race.
Wow.
That one's on my bucket list to do.
That sounds good.
But the Maratona, a couple of my friends had done it as well in our little cycling WhatsApp group. And they were like, we're planning on going this year. Does anyone else want to come? And I was like, yes. And so actually in the end, Maratona reached out to me and said, you want to come? And I was like, okay,
Yes.
if you want to
As a guest,
take me
why
there,
not?
that would be great. Yeah. So I had a red number on my bike. I was in the first 20 that started.
You had the helicopter going over the head, over the top.
I suddenly felt all this pressure. I was like, oh my God, are they expecting me to do this in 6 hours? Because I'm definitely not going to do that.
You went off with the pros in Pen 1.
Yes, it was pretty special. The only problem with that is that you set off at the same pace as them and then realize very quickly, oh no, I'm not going to be able to keep this up.
Why is everyone coming past me?
Yeah, exactly. But then it's like all of these things, you get head down and actually just get into your zone and realize it's about pacing more than anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was just a great experience. It really was. I came over the line and my sister had come out with me, and I get quite emotional when these things are done, because obviously you push yourself as hard as you can for a long period of time. And I got off the bike and I just put my arms around her. I was in floods of tears. And then she was like literally shoving pasta into my mouth. She goes, don't worry, the tears will come later. Just get some food down you first.
That's what cycling does to you. It's when you've got a challenge that you want to complete and you complete it, it's very emotional.
Exactly. And I think it also makes a huge amount of difference about having a loved one at the end.
Yeah.
Like when I've done the Coast to Coast challenge, my parents had picked up my kids and driven them to where they live on the West Coast. And they were all at the finishing line. And it's a long day in the saddle. It's 330 kilometers. And you start at 4 a.m. You need to try and get there before sunset. But I managed to get there by about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a nice ride to go and see the UK. And I was hurting myself a little bit to do it in that kind of time. And as soon as I saw them, I kind of collapsed again. And I was
break down in front of the
and then I keep saying, I'm never going to do that again. And then I sign up again.
I know.
I can relate to that though, from when I was racing and like as a kid racing, and then into like sort of junior, like when I was early adult racing. And my dad, my mum, I've got a younger sister, so my mum would always, look after my little sister. But my dad, bless him, trek all the way around the UK for me, and getting a result and like doing well or winning. And then my dad was there at the end. It just like, my memories don't come from I won that bike race or I got a podium in that bike race.
No.
They come from seeing my dad's face afterwards, and my dad was, I'll out him a bit, sometimes in tears. But they're the special memories for me, and that's what I remember most. So
exactly. They're shared things, right? You need to share those things with people.
I have the opposite. I completed a 70.3, and listen, it's the same principle as when you've got 4 kids, I've got 3. It's hard to get the training done. I was really, really proud of myself. And I broke down at the end. And my son said to me about 3 days later, when I was talking about potentially doing another event, he said, "You aren't going to cry again, are you?" Like,
yeah, you see, you can't win. You're going to be embarrassing either way.
Exactly. I was just an embarrassing dad.
When did you do that?
About 5 years ago.
That's been kept very quiet.
I know. It's well, I think if I told you the time, I'm not sure you'd be that impressed. George is an ex-pro.
Right. Okay. Well, we won't be getting any more numbers out then.
No.
So just going back to family life, you were talking about how you've got a fairly encouraging family about sort of not allowing you, but supporting you to go on your bike. Is that something that has kind of progressed as you've ridden? Have you always had that support from the family?
Yeah, I think also Clemmy recognises that I'm annoying if I don't go and burn off energy. Once again, I think it's the ADHD.
Yeah, the ADHD, exactly.
But I need to have that release, not only for my own physical needs, but my mental health as well. I need to be able to just go and concentrate on burning energy and not necessarily thinking about anything. And I think a lot of the riding that I do now is actually not looking at the data and actually just looking up and taking things in and letting my head be free. It's really the road in front of me, my hands on the handlebars and kind of a blank head. I don't think about anything when I cycle. I don't know what other people think about when they cycle. It's like a very personal thing. Yeah. Are you mulling over, all the issues that you have, or are you just enjoying things? You never know what's going on in someone else's head.
I wonder if that's a mindset thing, because I'm the polar opposite. When I cycle and I have complete time to myself, and I'm outside of work and I'm outside of the family, I do not stop thinking about work. And I find it a very difficult thing to switch my brain off, because I have fairly lucid thoughts and I think of all these ideas, but I actually think to myself, excuse me, sometimes it would be better if I just had my brain turned off and I could just have some relaxed peace and quiet. I find that a struggle, I must say.
What about you?
Yeah, I think since I've stopped racing now and I cycle for fun and very socially, I must admit, I'd say 90% of my cycling now is primarily social.
Yeah.
I like to keep fit and I'll go out on my bike, but going out with my friends.
You're still doing laps in Regent's Park on a Thursday morning.
They are not sociable, I would just like to say. They are not sociable. Normally, my thoughts are, I'm going to get dropped in a minute. I need to hang on.
Just hang on.
But since I've stopped racing, I have done away with my power meter. I very rarely ride with a heart rate monitor. Sometimes I'll even put my Garmin in my back pocket because I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to ride my bike and enjoy going out on my bike.
That's a nice place to be.
Yeah,
that's a nice place to be. I think in terms of timing of like when I can actually do it, as I mentioned, like the late night stuff was getting me into trouble. It was making me very fit. I had a great FTP. I could show everyone a really good number, but I wasn't mentally okay.
Yeah.
And actually now I think I've found that I'm a relatively fair weather cyclist.
Yeah.
I go on rides that I want to enjoy, not to beat myself up on. And I know that I need to kind of set a time limit. So the maximum amount of time I can get on a weekend is probably about 4 hours. And then during the week, if I want to go for a spin in the morning or something like that, then I can get that done after the kids are at school. I have the luxury of working from home as well, which makes it slightly easier. So I can kind of go out in my lunch break and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's always going to be a balancing act. Because I, in my mind, I always want to do a bit more.
Yeah, always pushing yourself.
You have to limit yourself. So.
A lot of your content recently has been riding with Clemmy, which did you get her into riding? You just said that she's very fit and she goes sort of the gym 6 times a week, but have you been encouraging that, or is that something that she's had a personal journey on?
Well, I think that what I was wanting to do is ride with her.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy all these rides that I go on and I tell her about them, and I'll send her photos of like this beautiful, country house somewhere in the middle of nowhere that she would never see because you were never going to drive past it. And I wanted to get her into it. One, as part of an exercise thing, but two, just to spend more time together. In a busy family life, you are usually centering around your kids, especially if you've got 4 of them. They always need to be taken somewhere, or someone's cooking a meal or cleaning up after them or whatever it is. If we can find an hour or 2 a week where we can just poodle around and go to a coffee shop and be together, that's 2 more hours than we usually would have had.
Yeah.
So that was why we were trying to do it.
Was that the rationale?
Yeah. We were just wanting to get time together.
Because I saw one of your posts, one of your posts said it allowed you just to spend more time together. And I thought, I've really looked at it from like that perspective.
Well, there's this, I was speaking to some friends about this and they were like, I'm not sure I want my wife to come on a ride. And because they want their own time.
Their own space.
Which I can kind of understand too, but I wanted Clemmy there. I wanted to share some of these experiences. I'm not asking her to come to the Maratona and do that with me because one, I think she'd hate it. But 2, that's not her thing. She's not there to herself. What she wants to do is a nice ride with me so we can then go and have a coffee and talk about stuff that doesn't involve being in the family home, being parents. And that's why we were kind of looked into that and managed to get like 3 or 4 decent rides last year together. As the weather gets better now, we're talking about doing it more.
Yeah.
The one thing that she hasn't been able to do is get into her cleats. She's still on the flat.
Is she on the flats?
Yeah.
Get practicing on the turbo first.
I know, I've said this.
Or the SPDs.
Yeah, or the mountain bike.
Yeah, that's not a bad option.
Yeah.
She does spin classes as well, but she still wears flats. And I was like, I bought you these shoes. You can take your own pedals in as well. And she's like, no, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. No, I think if you turn up with on a spin bike with the full kit, you better be a good rider.
Yeah, exactly.
And can I ask, do you ever cycle with the family? I mean, are your kids into it? I mean, you mentioned one of them is, but
yeah. Well, there's cycling with and then dragging them, which is slightly 2 different things. And I mean physically dragging them in a trolley. So we've started as they've got older. They've obviously become more proficient on their bikes, and there is lots to do in the area where we live. But it's all kind of a couple of miles in either direction. You don't want to get in a car for that. And when the weather's nice, we do manage to all get on a bike and then all go to Sandwich or Deal or wherever it might be. And just do a family ride. The kids, the younger ones, used to get pulled in a buggy by me, which was fun, especially on some of the hills. But as they've got older, we can all there's quite a good cycle path network where we live. So you're never really near a main road. And so, we're trying to do that more frequently and definitely got plans for that this summer as well.
Sounds cool. One thing we had Kate Verono, who she's director of women's strategy at Zwift, but she's also kind of the brains behind the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift.
Yeah,
we wondered whether that's had an impact in your household, whether that's something that's kind of resonated yet.
Yeah, well, they haven't watched it, but they definitely hear me talk about it because obviously I'm watching the race.
Yeah,
I try not to watch all of the race, obviously. Yeah. But I think they're much more aware of it. And actually seeing Clemmy riding as well. And we've met people like Danny Rowe as well. And she's become quite a good friend with Clemmy.
Right.
So there are those kind of female icons around cycling that are becoming more prevalent and actually becoming more known in the media. And I think that's excellent. Across all sports as well. I know my girls are obsessed by football. So they're constantly looking at female footballers and they can recite everyone and their stats as well. We're going to go and watch the England rugby at Twickenham, the Women's Six Nations. Just having female sports stars who are more readily available for kids to be able to see because it's being televised is so important.
I would agree. My mum and dad took me to watch the Women's Tour of Britain when I was really young. I think I must have been about 9 or 10 when they first took me to see that. And I was blown away. Like, I remember thinking, this is what I want to do. And that was like a real sort of like switch for me when I was racing and things like, gosh, wouldn't it be so cool if I did this?
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate enough that I did go on to actually go and race with some of the people I stood having a picture with, which,
But it's also the same as when we spoke to Kate and she said, when it becomes more prevalent on your screens and when the broadcasters are starting to show more women's sport, it's not just women's cycling, it's the WSL or the women's rugby or whatever it is. Yeah. You've got female icons. So that's kind of why I wanted to know whether that's resonated in the house.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it's given them aspirations to actually think about a different career path that they could go into, which involves being a professional sports person. And whether they have the skills or capabilities or the drive to be able to see it through, that's kind of irrelevant. It's the fact that they can see it happening in front of them. Yeah, exactly.
You can't be what you can't see.
Yeah, exactly.
I think is really important. And that was very important for me when I was growing up. And it was sort of at a time where it wasn't that much, people didn't want to be, especially girls, unfortunately, didn't want to be that sort of those sports stars and that athletic. And
you'd have the comment of like you're a tomboy and you're not doing a female type thing.
Whatever that is.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
I remember being like in year 7 at school and saying to somebody, I think it was outside of school, but saying, let me say, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a bike rider. I want to be a bike racer. And sort of like,
that's so
really?
Cool.
Are you sure? Like, why?
Yeah.
I was like, well, I like riding my bike, and I went to this race last week, and it was really cool, and I saw these women doing it as a job, and wouldn't that be so much fun?
Yeah.
But it was sort of a bit like, whereas now I think it's the norm.
Yeah,
like, almost. I
still think there's, and I've got nothing to back this up, but this is just my understanding from speaking to my daughters about their experience at school as well, and from me seeing it in my childhood, is that girls do get to a certain age sometimes and sport just becomes like this backseat thing. And now I don't know if that's still true, but especially around 14, 15, people don't necessarily keep playing netball or hockey or whatever it is, or they'll come back to it later in life. But boys are actively encouraged to kind of keep pushing and doing it. Whereas I don't think, and I don't, as I said, I can't back this up with anything, but it's my perception is that maybe girls aren't pushed as much to be able to continue doing that kind of thing. Now, maybe that's changed, and I hope if it hasn't, then I hope it does. But they need to have that kind of push as well. It's not just about boys being successful at sport.
But presumably that's different in your household because you are pushing.
Well, yeah, I'm trying not to be the pushy parent, but I'm actively encouraging them to try everything.
Yeah.
Like, so whatever you want to do, that's fine. But I will help you do those things so you can at least try them. If you don't love it, that's fine. We'll find something else that clicks for you.
Yeah.
It does mean that I spend a lot of time in the car just driving to random places, getting uniforms.
Yeah, a lot of money on kit.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you need to be put in touch with my poor mum and dad. I was actually chatting to my dad the other day. I was saying, oh, what are you doing this weekend? He was like, oh, well, going to a football match. I mean, mum are going out for dinner. And like, I was like, oh, lovely. Sounds really nice. He's like, yeah, long are the days I'd be trekking around England going to a bike race after you. I was like, well,
thanks, Dad.
You encouraged it.
Yeah.
He obviously loved it and wouldn't have changed it for the world. But yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question? When you're talking, obviously you've got 4 daughters and you've got a wife. We talked about inclusivity within cycling and whether, this is on a previous podcast, we were talking about inclusivity and whether there are barriers to entry for women to get into cycling. Did Clemmy, when you started introducing cycling, or your kids, did they ever see those barriers, or did you just not are those barriers non-existent in your house?
I don't think they're existent in our house. I think there is a preconception that male cycling can be quite a male-dominated environment. You just need to see the cycling clubs, and it's, the vast majority of people are guys.
People like us.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're on a group ride on a Sunday, especially around where I am, but I'm sure this is the same in other places, it's predominantly men. And it can be, I would assume, a bit intimidating. If you were just moving to a new area and you wanted to get introduced to a cycling group and you're looking at a group and it's 80, 90% guys, would you want to go on a ride with that group? I don't know. That comes down to individual personalities and all of that kind of stuff. But having a safe space for women to be able to at least get introduced and then have a slow integration, it needs to be less about men and women, but actually trying to push the people together and actually, enjoy the sport that you've volunteered to spend time on. I don't know that there are necessarily ways out there that work well. I'm sure there are, but I'm just not aware of them at the moment. But yeah, it does feel like there are still barriers to a certain degree, or at least that's what I see from an external perspective. You may have different experiences with your social riding as well.
I think for me, growing up, it was very much along those lines. So the cycling club was predominantly, the men who were wonderful, I must say, and very sort of put me in and taught me the ropes and things. And I think now, as I've got older and I've moved to London, my social circle of cycling, I've got a great group of girls that I ride with week in, week out. We go to Regent's Park on a Thursday morning with work, and you see loads of girls on bikes. Cycling's now cool.
Yeah,
I think we talked about this before. When I was at school, cycling was not a cool thing to do. It was, what on earth? You're such a boy. Like, why are your knees so scarred? Like, look at your ridiculous tan. But now cycling is very cool. The kit's cooler. Bikes are cooler. Bikes are designed for girls. Kit is also designed for girls. You can style yourself a little bit more. I think it's sort of being one step at a time. We are seeing it more, and that's on our screens, in shops, in books, magazines, etc. I think it is changing for the better.
I think with some of the events that I've gone to over the last couple of years, there has been a growing number of women that would attend the events in groups as well. So that there's an active increase in the numbers that I see at those events that are doing things together. And I think with Clemmy starting out as well, with riding over the last year, we did a couple of group rides with the local people. And there were some women in those groups which immediately made it easier for Clemmy to be able to be involved, because then she would be chatting away and having a conversation as she's going around and doing the ride. Whereas I think maybe it would have been different if it had been predominantly
just male oriented,
men guys, like all trying to kill each other.
Yeah. Listen, before we let you go, we kind of reached out to our audience. We had a couple of listener questions, and they were kind of quick fire ones.
Okay.
I think you may have already answered the first couple. Early ride or late ride? I'm going to guess now is early.
Yeah, it needs to be early, but predominantly I was doing late.
Solo or social?
Was solo, but it has to be social now.
Coffee stop, essential or overrated? This is a big one.
Overrated.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I don't stop.
What?
So
I refuse to go on a ride now if I'm not going to stop.
No.
I don't know why, but I think people's conversation around coffee and cycling can get a little pretentious sometimes.
Number one, I don't drink coffee.
Right, okay.
And number two, I see it as a waste of time. I don't have time to sit around for half an hour
have a good coffee
and chinwag. I've got to get back.
And finally, one ride you'll never forget.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Maratona, just because I've mentioned it earlier. I think it is a fabulous
That's
ride.
what we like to hear.
It's a bucket list thing. If you haven't done it and you've got any interest in being in the Dolomites, riding, challenging yourself, then I don't think you can beat it.
And finally, how can our listeners follow you?
You can go onto Instagram and follow Father of Daughters.
Fabulous. Listen, massively appreciate you joining us. It was really insightful, really interesting to have a chat. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for joining us on today's episode. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us at wherewerideatlovevelo.co.uk, or you can send us a DM on Instagram or follow us at Where We Ride Podcast. See you next time.